Let's say this together. I'm not what I do. I'm not what I have. I'm not what people say about me. I am the beloved of God. It's who I am. No one can take it from me. I don't have to worry. I don't have to hurry. I can trust my friend Jesus and share his love with the world. Man, is that creed needed now more than ever? I think it is. I found myself saying it in a meditative way last night just before going to bed. It was a creed originally that I used to use in this way to just pray. Nobody knew about it. But man, a time when we need to know I'm not what I do. I can't get out there and do the stuff. I can't, I feel powerless in a way to be able to do these things. I'm not what I have. I'm not what people say about me. It's an important time to remember that. Let's all keep a positive mindset and continue to develop the inner life. This is an opportunity that, everybody's going to come out of this coronavirus thing different than they were when they started and different than their neighbors. Some people are going to come out worse. Some people are going to come out better. And I just believe and proclaim over you, you are going to come out of this thing better. And even though we're going to miss out on some things, we're going to not have as many of the fun things, this is a great time to develop your inner life, to continue to grow and to learn and to ask the Lord to use these difficult circumstances to develop you as a person, and I think you will. We're in a series called God's Names for You, and I think this is one thing that you can do during this time is to remember what God calls you, the names that God has for you. So one of the names that I think is so powerful that we're going to talk about today is this phrase from the Bible that you are the apple of God's eye. You are the apple of God's eye. The phrase, which is common now in the English language, is original to the Bible. The apple of a person's eye, literally it's that white part of the eye. It's like if you're really close to someone and you look in their eyes, you can see yourself in their eyes, and that's the apple part. It means that God is looking at you so intently, so wide-eyed, with so much love and so compassion that he's gazing on you with love, and that it's like you're literally dancing in his eyes. The point is that he's looking at you, and it's a term of endearment. He loves you. He likes you, and he's watching over you. It's like you're right in the middle of everything he's looking at. Isn't that a lovely image? Do you believe that? Do you believe God is watching you and he loves you? I do. I believe that even though God has seen all of the stuff maybe that you're embarrassed about, or things about your past, or things that you're tempted by, or ways that you mess up, that in spite of all of that, he is watching you. He favors you, he loves you, and he's going to protect you, and he's going to watch over you. So believe it today that you are the apple of God's eye. Believe it. In the same way that a loving mother, a loving father just looks over and loves their children, God is looking over and loving you. This phrase appears all over the Bible, but the best place, in my opinion, that it appears is in the book of Zacharia. Zacharia begins at the end of the exile. You remember the exile, don't you? In the story of the Jewish people, the people sinned and worshipped idols and neglected the poor and sacrificed children, and so they were conquered by the Babylonian Empire. And during that time, they spent 70 years in exile, just working away from home, thousands of miles from where they were from, in the city of Babylon, toiling away for the Babylonian emperors, until one day, a man that the Bible actually calls a Messiah, King Darius the Great from the Persian Median Empire, comes into Babylonia and frees them. And he says, you all can return home. And there's this moment. 70 years is a long time. That's from what now to the Second World War. I mean, that is a long period of time. And Darius says, you're free to return home. But many of the people who can return home were born in Babylon. They're still Jewish. They still have their Bibles, but they probably speak the local language, and maybe their Hebrew isn't so good, and so they have to go back to this place that was effectively abandoned. There were still some people there, but when they return back to Jerusalem, it's in shambles. And for many of them, even though this is home, there's something foreign about the place. And imagine returning to a once bustling city, and there were some patches of people that stayed back to kind of keep things up, but not really. And you come back, and all the roads are overgrown and the plumbing doesn't work anymore and buildings are collapsed and vacant and there's weeds growing out of windows and roofs, and you return en masse with all of these people, and now you've got food problems and water problems and infrastructure problems and governance problems, and you look around and you go, well, where do you even start? What do you do? Well, Haggai and Zacharia had an answer to that question, where do you start? And they said, you start by building the temple. Now that's an interesting thing to say, because a temple, you would think from a practical standpoint, is like the last thing you need. You need water, you need roads, you need walls, you need these types of things. But Zacharia and Haggai are trying to encourage the people, look, God has brought us home. In fact, this is what Zacharia says at the beginning of the book. God has brought us home, and the reason we were in exile is because of our sin, because of how we were in the past, of how we neglected the poor and turned our hearts to idols and did all the stuff, child sacrifice. We will not be like that. And God says to you, return to me and I will return to you. And the people respond. The people just bow down in repentance and cry out. And then Zechariah is like, all right, let's build a temple. So in this dream, in Zechariah chapter 2, following this idea that you should not be like your ancestors, that you should build the temple first, God gives this dream to Zechariah, and it looks like this in Zechariah chapter 2. Zechariah said, then I looked up, and there before me was a man with a measuring line in his hand. So an angel who was going to measure the city. I asked, where are you going? And he answered me, to measure Jerusalem, to find out how wide and how long it is. While the angel was speaking to me, was leaving, another angel came to meet him and said to him, run, go and tell the young man. The prophet Zechariah is actually young. We always think of prophets as like old men with beards. He's a young guy. Anyway, run and tell the young man, Jerusalem will be a city without walls because of the great number of people and animals in it. Just pause real quick. In the ancient world, a city without walls was a crazy thing. The only way your city didn't have walls is if your city and your people were so powerful that nobody would dare attack you. Like you had so many armies and such a great thing that like nobody's going to mess with Persia. Nobody's going to mess with Babylon. And so there's no need for walls. So the idea is it's like you're going to be so full of power and so full of glory, and it's just like spilling over with wealth and prosperity and life and goodness. This is the prophecy. You're not going to need walls. And there's not going to be, you can't have walls because there's not going to be enough room to contain the blessing that God has you. Wow, for the Old Testament, this is a good prophecy. Usually they're bad, right? It's fire, it's things are coming. This is good news, And then it goes on. And then the natural question is, well, will I be safe? If there's no walls, how will we be safe? And God says, and I myself, okay, listen to these. I myself will be a wall of fire around Jerusalem, declares the Lord. And I will be its glory within. Let me pause again. I think that two of some of the greatest human needs that are often in conflict with each other are the need for safety on one hand. A lot of us didn't realize how great a need that was until this coronavirus thing happened. And then on the other hand, the need for glory. We always think of glory as a bad thing. It's not. Remember what Paul says? Jesus Christ, the hope of glory. So self-glorification and ego is a bad thing, but there's this need, glory, meaning that you live a life that shines, that you have done things that matter, that when you leave this world, you left it better than it was, that you've done things in your life that made a difference, that had an impact, that were worth doing. And both of those things are very often at odds. Sometimes your greatest dreams and visions are also opposed to your personal safety, maybe financial safety or things like that. And you also want to create a safe place for your family, your kids, your country, but that takes away from your ability to do great things and achieve great things. And isn't it amazing that in one single promise, God promises both to his people? He says, I will be a wall of fire around you, and he will be, and I will be glory within you. That's a promise of God from you, to trust that he's going to not only protect you and keep you safe, but also he will be the glory within, that when you follow after him, that there will be a light within you. That will be great. Okay, and then finally he says, now he's talking to all the people who still have not come back. Come, come, flee from the land of the north, declares the Lord. For I have scattered you to the four winds of heaven, declares the Lord. Come, Zion, escape you who live in daughter Babylon. For this is what the Lord Almighty says. After the glorious one has sent me against the nations that have plundered you, for whoever touches you touches the apple of his eye. It's like saying anytime somebody harms you, it's like somebody goes, bap, and just pokes God in the eye. Like he's looking at you and gazing you and loving you, and somebody goes, boom, like it just hits him in the eye. Isn't that a great image that God is so for you, so on your side, that anyone who would harm you or touch you or hurt you, it's like they've stabbed God in the eye, that you are the apple of his eye, that even now he's looking after you, he loves you, he's on your side, and he's going to be a wall of protection around you, and he's going to be the glory within you. We don't have to worry all day. We can trust that, things in this life are in the hands of God. I want you to know that you have God's favor upon your life. Now, whenever you see the word favor in the Bible, as a translator, if you translate, you can choose one of two words when you see it. You can either translate it as favor, or you can translate it as grace. Very often we, as whatever native language you speak, I speak English obviously, but when I translate the Bible from this word, I get to choose grace or favor, and we forget that that is the same word. It's the same word. You could say, we as Christians are saved by grace through favor. It means you're God's favorite. That means it's almost like the same way when I'm watching, my daughter play soccer or something, or some game with her friends. I don't really care about I care about my daughter. God is looking at you, and he's rooting for you, and he's on your side. Having God's favor, being the apple of God's eye, is the wisest place to be. It's the smartest thing you can do, and it's the thing we should seek after. And this is why Zacharia says, build the temple first. These things are important. But I want to know that I am in the center of God's kingdom. I want to know that I am got God's favor over my life, and that he's going to open these things up and present these opportunities to me. I love, in Hebrew, the word favor, by the way, is Hana, which is like Hannah, or the root word chen. So I know most of you speak Hebrew, but we're just going to look real quick. Hebrew is what do they call it? An image language. So in the same way like Chinese characters, you can see, images within the writing itself. Hebrew is the same way. So Hebrew goes from right to left, because I'm pretty sure that the person that invented Hebrew was a lefty, because poor lefties, now we go left to right and they get ink. My daughter is a lefty. When she writes, she gets ink all over the bottom of her hand, So if you're a lefty and you're inventing a language, so you go right to left. Okay. This is the letter het, and it makes the ch sound. It's the first letter in the word Hannah, or Hannah. And this letter also is a pictograph of a house or a fence. Can you kind of see it? It's like a house, a hut, or a wall. And this is the letter nu, and it changes over time. Originally it was on its side thousands of years ago, but doesn't look. But it's supposed to be a fish. It's hard to see. It's a fish. So when you see this letter, you picture a house or safety or a fence or walls. And when you see this letter, you picture a fish, which is the main food, right, for Israel. So it's sustenance, it's life, it's life-giving, it's good, it's value. So this word hen, which means favor or grace, is the idea that God is going to protect you and that God is going to sustain you. that God's going to be around you and look after you. He's going to feed you. He's going to make sure you have everything you need. So even when you read the word favor or grace, you also can see pictographically within the word itself, the idea of both protection and sustenance. Isn't that lovely? This is what God has for you. All this to simply say, if you have anything to seek God's favor. Seek the temple. Build your temple first. Develop the inner life. You know, when I have the opportunity as a pastor to watch people, and I recognize that the thing over time that makes the biggest difference in people is character, is whether or not they have built that inner life to get through tough times and to get through difficult things. So I want to encourage you, as Jesus said, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these other things will be added to you. Okay, I'll just finish with this. I think now more than ever, it is so important that we are not rash. That now more than ever, we are not making huge decisions that will dictate the rest of our life. That right now more than ever in your life, is the time to practice patience. Remember, when Paul talks about love, the first word that he uses is the word patient. Love is patient. So we have to be patient with our neighbor and patient with our business and our parents. And I know this sounds horrible, but even patient with the authorities and the government and people like that. That to practice the fruit of patience is going to be a good thing right now. Trust that you are the apple of God's eye. That God has a great plan for your future. That life is an experience of just more, better, good, that more good is coming. Whatever the thing was that maybe you lost because of the coronavirus, I want to promise you that even better things can come and replace it. Just focus on the temple. Focus on building your temple. Focus on your inner life. Focus on growing in the Lord, so that when things open up, you won't come out ragged and bored and tired and foggy brained, but you'll come out full of energy, full of ideas, full of life, full of positivity, and you'll see God do great things in your life and just bring all that favor and all of that hope into your life. I believe that will happen. In Jesus' name, amen.